Hello, ladies and gentlemen, especially to our educators. Welcome again to our Training Masters Edu Talks. This is Dr. A. Our video will focus on designing, teaching, and learning activities. For those who have not yet watched my video on designing intended learning outcomes, I suggest that you watch that first for you to understand this topic. Now, this is TLA. Please consider two components here. We have the T and we have the L. So T stands for teaching and L stands for learning. So we'll be talking about teaching and learning activities. Now, we have this example of a table that shows common TLAs with associated teaching and learning activities. TLA here is similar to the old heading, which is the teaching method. But it's not enough and it's not sufficient that you just put lecture or assignment in your lesson plan. Now, this section is supposed to detail what the teacher will be doing, that those are the teaching activities, and what the learners should be doing or students' activities. Okay, so these are the activities that students should be doing. So for lecture, for example, we have here present, explain, describe activities of the teacher. And detailed here are some of the learners' activities, which could be the students are required to listen. They may be taking notes. They might be explained with co-learners in groups or in pairs. And for the assignment, possible activities could be give the topic, set the guidelines. So these are what the teachers should be doing. And then for the learning activities, while the teacher gives topic and then set the guidelines, okay, the students might be required to explain, search information, and do sort of writing. To understand this further, okay, what about if you have film showing? What about if your TLA or your teaching method is project? What could be your teaching activities if you're the teachers? At the same, you have to think of what the students must be doing. By the way, as you plan your lesson, it's important that you think of what the students should be doing rather than what you'd be doing as teachers. Besides, when you design intended learning outcomes, they must be in the student's perspective. That's why you put there at the end of the course, the students. Okay, so please take note. The learners, the students, the trainees must be able to, whatever that verb or those verbs you want these learners to activate in the teaching and learning process. Okay, some typical ILOs like describe, apply, solve problem. I have here some examples of these possible teaching and learning activities. So this is the TLA or the TLAs like field trip, sorry for the wrong spelling, field trip, lecture, written essay, demonstration, project, case study, PBL. So please consider teaching activities here, learning activities. If your TLA is case study, so you have to think of what the teacher will be doing, what the students will be doing. Now, take note. One of the principles is to consider that TLAs can be assessment as well. If you do this, then you have excellent alignment. So this means that whatever verbs you have in the intended learning outcomes, whatever verbs you have in the teaching and learning activities, these verbs should be activated by the learners in the assessment. If your ILO is for them to be able to apply, then in the teaching and learning activities, they must be engaged in many applications. So you must be applying and then carry this verb in the assessment, they must be applying. So if you have that, then you have an excellent alignment. Well, I have also a separate video on constructive alignment. If you would care to, please watch that video. Now, the point is, of course, it's not how you're going to teach, but how and what you want the students to learn. Please take note, educators, that it is what the learners do that they learn, not what you do. Again, may I highlight this, that it is what the students do that they learn, not what the teacher does. Therefore, again, looking at the student-centered approach. To give you the general overview of what we're talking about here. So you will see now the alignment between the ILO. I put in here CILO, that means course intended learning outcome, and the teaching and learning activities. Okay, so this is to give you an understanding of the whole picture. So if you have this CILO, for example, CILO 1, this is, by the way, for technical writing. By the end of the course, students should be able to, one, explain each method of exposition. So expected teaching and learning activities here, okay, so you have there, all these teaching activities are explicitly written. For the lecture discussion as TLA, the teaching activities here are, the teacher will present and discuss the different methods down to, of course, ask the students to explain each method. So as the teacher presents, the students listen and take notes. They may be asked they may be encouraged, of course, to ask questions, and they may answer questions, and then the most important activity here is, of course, to let the students activate the verb explain. So that is why we have this activity here. The students will explain each method of exposition. This is very important, really, that they enact the verb. For the CILO 2, the same. You have write an essay, you have the details of the teaching activities, and then you have the learning activities. Of course, the students will be writing essay based on the task given. So this is to activate again the given intended learning outcome. So ladies and gentlemen, please always make sure that when you prepare or design your lesson plan, all the teaching activities are explicitly written. Learning activities must also be well written there. So don't just put TLA or teaching method, lecture discussion, sit work, and you put question and answer, okay, because that is not sufficient. So I hope this video were able to contribute something. And before we end, I want you to answer these questions. How do you adjust the TLAs to reflect the relative importance of ILOs? We have to consider, of course, two aspects here: the time and the opportunity of the students to enact the more important verb. So this means that the higher the ILO, the higher the verb, the longer the time required. And then the students must be activating or enacting, or they must be engaged in the more important ILOs. So this is very important to consider, because sometimes we give more time to some not so important ILOs. So I believe that the discussions about constructive alignment is clear. Well, you may watch this video multiple times, and again I encourage you to watch my video on constructive alignment, and at the same time the designing of intended learning outcomes. Thank you for watching. For my next video, it's going to be on designing assessment tasks.